Welcome to the Confidence Conversations podcast. I'm Gail from Enrichment Coaching, Clarity and Courage Coaching for Confidence, and I'm the founder and CEO, or actually I prefer Chief Enrichment Officer. I love to make a difference to those beliefs that you have about what you think you can and can't do. So the idea behind this podcast is to get the confidence conversation going, and I want to explore all the different views and opinions on confidence because there's loads out there. I'm going to be talking to lots of different people over the episodes and exploring their confidence. How do they know when it's at their strongest? How do they know when it's at their lowest? And how do they manage that? And I'll be asking them for their top tips or takeaways about how they enrich their own confidence. Now, just to be clear, these conversations won't have any fancy editing. They'll be organic and authentic, just letting the conversation flow. That said, I know I'll be curious, so there may be a hint of coaching and questioning along the way. So, let's go. So hi everyone, and welcome to the next episode of the Confidence Conversations podcast. In fact, this is the last in this episode, and I've saved the best till last, if you like. No offense to the other guests, by the way, because they've all been amazing. But today I have invited on Kate Harris, who is the incredible CEO from VotesForSchools. Now, I could explain to you what VotesForSchools does, but that would be wrong of me. And obviously, Kate can do that much better than I can. So welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming. So tell us a little bit about you and what you do.
Obviously you mentioned there, Gail, my name is Kate Harris, and in a previous life I was a teacher and a school senior leader, and obviously super passionate about children, about education and everything that's kind of entwined within that. And in 2016, I decided, I don't know whether I'm like totally bonkers, but I decided to launch a business that kind of took my passion around education, but also to create something that wasn't happening. So born was VotesForSchools. And so what we do, it's sort of a really simple idea. So we work weekly like a newspaper, and we take a current issue. For example, at the moment we're discussing some stuff around LGBTQ+, because it's Pride Month. Next week we're looking at something called incel, which is some stuff around sort of toxic masculinity and things like that. And so we take these current issues and we create some amazing content for schools so that any teacher across the country can basically take the content and deliver it. We do this in primary schools, secondary schools and colleges. So basically the kids have this conversation using this amazing content. The kids love it because obviously, you know, children love talking about things that are going on in the world around them. Given half the chance, they will want to have a debate and discussion more than they'll want to do anything else. So, you know, whether it's talking about Ukraine or whether it's talking about social media, mental health, loneliness, sports, they always have something to say, which is fantastic. So we get them discussing it. It's sort of impartial, which is really important. So we're giving them two sides of the story. And then at the end of the session, they vote. And we've got this amazing platform that we have built. So the children vote, and then we have an amazing impact team at VotesForSchools who basically take the data and the information that the children are giving us about the topic, and then we use it to get their views and their opinions and their voice essentially out into the wider world. So at the moment to give you a sort of solid example, the children, our children have discussed about the internet and, you know, how safe it is or isn't, and the information from that particular vote topic went to feed into the online harms bill that went through Parliament. So these kids are like genuinely having like an amazing impact, and it's never the insight from children and young people that's an informed insight has never ever been done before. So it's totally entrepreneurial. And as you can imagine, you know, we share the data with government, think tanks, charities, celebrities, influencers. You know, we've had like Rio Ferdinand comment on the voting. So that's kind of what we do. And I suppose, why do we do it is the big question. And the answer to that question is because at some point in my life, I decided that I wanted to make the world a better place. And I thought that the best way we could do that is to get everyone to actually participate in our politics. You know, kids and a lot of adults, a lot of my friends even don't think politics is for them. And they don't realise that politics is literally everything, and that everyone should be informed and should use their right to vote in our democracy. You know, we all get one vote. It doesn't matter if we're the richest person or the poorest person. You know, we all have that one opportunity. And if everyone voted in this country, then politics would look very different to how it looks now, you know, and it would represent people. You know, the politicians talk to the people that they know are going to rock up at the polling stations and vote for them. So by doing what we're doing, it's kind of like going back to grassroots and saying to these kids, this is politics, Ukraine, you know, toxic masculinity, LGBTQ, loneliness, all of those things. That's all politics. So if we get them from a young age, sort of debating, discussing, feeling passionate and motivated by some of these topic areas, and getting them voting every week, then we're sort of giving them these amazing habits and this great toolkit to basically rock up at 18 and go and vote. And then there'll be no more political apathy and the world will be a totally different place.
It'll all be down to you.
And well, at one point in 2016, I had an idea, but the rest is I've got this most amazing team of people who, you know, if you met my team, well, they're just phenomenal. They're so driven, so passionate, so motivated, and everyone says, oh, you know, it's a really easy mission to get on board with, but you know, they go above and beyond all the time. I'm like truly blessed. So yeah, and amazing schools and amazing teachers and children, you know, all of which, you know, I consider to be part of the team because they're part of it. You know, it's we collaborate and we're a team. Yeah,
I think for me as well, I love your values because they sum up everything that kind of you've just said, haven't you? And they are, I have to get them in the right order here: be informed, be curious, be heard. I should know this by now, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, we've done a little bit of work on values, haven't we, with the team, and I can confirm they are amazing, super talented team, and so such an integral part of the business. I mean, the business just runs right through them, and I think that we were trying to work with them to say, you know, think about the values internally and how you might use them, and for them to make that switch from, but hang on, why are we not talking about the children, why are we suddenly talking about us, was really hard, because that's what's so passionate, is about getting children's voices heard. And you and I have had the conversation as well about, you know, our next prime minister, our next leaders are in school right now.
Exactly, they're in primary school, you know.
Yeah.
And it's, you know, I'm sort of really driven and passionate about this idea that, you know, we've got such amazing children and young people in schools all across the country, and we, you know, we select, you know, most of them that are in politics are, you know, from particular schools with particular affluent backgrounds, and that doesn't mean to say they don't deserve to be there, but it would be amazing to have some, you know, some real lived experience in politics, that, you know, kids that have grown up in tough areas, that have experienced being young carers or young parents, or, you know, anything that's kind of gives politics that human side that sometimes I feel is a little bit lacking, because ultimately, you know, you represent the people, and it would be great to get, you know, some of the future politicians, you know, like I say, from the sort of schools that we work with up and down the country, would be just be amazing.
So I'm really interested, because obviously this is the podcast is all about confidence. So I'm really interested, back in 2016, where did your confidence come from to start with this idea?
Well, it's a really good question. I think I probably grew up, you know, I've got quite an interesting background and a backstory, and I've sort of spent a lot of my life taking risks, or things happening to me where, you know, not taking a risk wasn't an option. You know, like I sort of had a difficult childhood. I grew up with my dad and my stepmom. So my mum didn't win custody of me, and unfortunately she was quite unwell. She was an alcoholic. So I've kind of grown up in an environment where we didn't do things in the way that the norm was. You know, it was kind of, you know, I remember friends friends at school saying to me, what do you mean you live with your dad? That's just unheard of. So I think I probably, without realizing, was building a sort of confidence / resilience base of just kind of going, well, you don't always have to do things the way things have always been done. So I think there's like an inherent confidence that comes from unique experiences that we all have. And then I think I'd had an amazing teaching career, Gail, and I was like, I don't know, I'd built a lot of confidence. I suppose within my teaching career, I realized that I could do it, and I was motivated to do it, because kids are like, if you could bottle up what it, when you work with kids, it is insane. Like, it's such a privilege, and if you could bottle it up and sell it, you'd be a millionaire. I mean, it's just unbelievable the buzz you get from working in and around young people. So I think it's a whole combination of things. I think it was reinforcement that I kind of had a good idea. It was like a reinforcement of the fact I'd had a good career, and I had a career I could always go back to. And that's kind of, gives you a bit of a comfort blanket. And I had amazing family support, and I sort of, I don't know, there was something always been something in me that just wanted to do something different. And I had a child young, and I just wanted to prove to him that you can do something quite phenomenal if you kind of put your mind to it. And I think it's also the confidence to know that it's okay to fail, or it's not necessarily always going to work, but you can't spend your life not doing that. You sometimes have to put yourself out there, even if it doesn't have, and running a business and launching a business from scratch is not, it's like there's been a lot of tears and tantrums along the way, and a lot of lost sleep. But yeah, so I don't know if that's kind of answered the question. It's a kind of combination of layers of confidence that have kind of built up, possibly, and a total drive. Like, I knew what I wanted to do. I knew it wasn't going to be easy, and I kind of just like, buckle up, let's go for the ride,
I think it's interesting that you describe it as layers, because I think throughout the podcast, if people have been listening to the series, we talk a lot about confidence being a practice, and it not being somebody described it as a not passive pastime. It's not easy to say, but I think that this is what it's about. It's about practice and layering and building up those layers until you feel more confident. And actually, we were just talking before we recorded this, and you said that you'd been to see the bank manager this morning. We don't need to go in, but you rocked up in your flip-flops, and you were like, I was going to apologize, but no, I'm not. And that's the kind of thing I love, right? Because that is almost unashamed confidence, isn't it? That is like, do you know, it doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter what I wear, because actually I'm still me, and I still do what I do. But to have the confidence to do that, I mean, times would have gone by where we'd have got dressed up, right, to go and see the bank manager.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think it's always been like that. I think I probably have, since launching the business, gone through that kind of almost like playing a role, casting a role and playing it. Like, I've started a business and I'm meeting an investor, so I've got to dress a certain way, behave a certain way, speak about certain things. And I think, like, certainly over the last few years, and a lot of this, we've worked a lot together, and you definitely have really, really helped me develop this. But over the last few years, I've just kind of got a little bit kind of rebellious, I suppose, a little bit maverick about this idea that business women don't have to be what we think they should be. Like, I told you the flip-flop thing, but I didn't tell you I also had tracksuit bottoms on. I mean, who rocks up to see their bank manager in tracksuit bottoms and flip-flops? Obviously a top as well, because that would just be weird.
Oh, that would be weird. You might have enjoyed it, who knows? But
it's that thing of like, the way that I look, who I am, my gender, my age, all of that stuff has no bearing on the business, my, how competent I am. I kind of, I want to be seen as somebody who doesn't need to do all of those things, because ultimately it's about kind of what's in your heart, and what's, what you can articulate, and what's in your head, and what you can bring to the table. It's not about what clothes you wear, so yeah, maybe it is a bit of an inherent confidence, but it's not always been there, 100% not. Like, and there are days when it's not, and I think that's the whole thing with confidence, is that you can have a base, like a foundation, and like sometimes the house that's on my foundation is a mansion, other times it's literally a crumbling bungalow, you know. So it's that kind of thing. It's that, I love an analogy.
Yeah.
So it's, you know, your confidence can be knocked dead quick, you know. It can happen in seconds, and as humans we do tend to like cling on to the negative, which is just, you know, bizarre, and you have to work hard to not let it knock you totally, you know.
Definitely. So tell me then, what does confidence mean to you? If you had to sum it up in a sentence or a few words.
I think confidence is, you know, where you can is being the best that you can be, projecting the best that you can be. And I think I say that because I think confidence allows you to do that. So that's the outcome for me, is this ability to articulate and to be the best version of myself. And you know, having confidence helps me do that.
So then when do you see that best version of yourself? As in, when is your confidence? Well, when are you in the mansion?
Oh, that's a good point. So I definitely say, so when I'm surrounded by my team, obviously, because they are just fantastic. You know, I always feel super confident in and around them. And when I'm talking about Votes for Schools, like, because I mean, if I go right back to the beginning, I remember we launched and I was invited to Halifax to do a deputy heads, to speak at a deputy heads like network meeting. And there were about 15 deputy heads in there. And obviously, you know, when you first start a business, it's very difficult to stand up and be like uber confident, you know all the things you can say, be confident enough to change track, you know, all of that stuff. And I was like really, really anxious, as you would be, even though essentially these people are sort of colleagues to me, because, you know, I'm from that industry. But then, you know, fast forward, you know, the journey that I've been on. And, you know, I was talking at a conference on Friday with about 60 head teachers. And, you know, I just feel at my best when I'm surrounded by amazing, talented people who are then in awe of what I'm doing and what I've achieved and then they want it for their schools. Like I don't know, I just get really, I get confidence when I'm vibing with people that are, you know, that are passionate themselves and, you know, and certainly passionate about education. So I definitely say Votes for Schools. When I'm talking about it, it's just, I'm like in my happy place. And people will tell you, like, don't start Kate off, because she literally won't shut up about Votes for Schools.
I've seen that recently. So I think because obviously we've been working together quite a while. So we did a bit of lockdown coaching, working together, a bit of face-to-face. And I can't remember where we were, but we saw somebody and they were like, oh, so what do you do? You know, kind of the old, and you went into it. And I don't think I'd ever seen you kind of go into your sort of spiel before. And I stood back and I was like, wow, you know, that it just kind of comes really naturally, where I think a lot of us that are in a kind of running a business like me, you know, we think about what our 60-second pitches and all of that. Yeah. But for you, it just kind of comes, I mean, I know you've lived and breathed everything Votes for Schools, but it just comes so naturally. And for me, that is a confidence, but also a passion and enthusiasm for what you're doing. And when I'm listening to you talk now, I always hear you going back to, it's about other people. So, you know, whether it's about your team or the people you surround with or your partners or the schools or the children, actually a lot of this it is about other people and you surrounding yourself with them to kind of build so that you're in that in the mansion of confidence, if you like.
Yeah,
I like that. I might borrow that.
Yeah, no, yeah, use it. Yeah. Like I say, love an analogy. Yeah, and also I think it's being comfortable in your own skin, you know. And I remember when I first started teaching, I hadn't quite mastered my own style of teaching. Like, I can't describe it to you. You know, you train to be a teacher and you're sort of taught, you know, that you teach a lesson in certain ways, that, you know, you get all this training, but ultimately what you're not told is get comfortable, you know, shake it out, get comfortable in your own skin and be you, do you, like. And it took me a while in teaching to do that. And then I mentored quite a lot of trainee teachers. And I used to say to them, don't copy me. I'm me, like be comfortable with who you are. And even with the business at the beginning, and I'd sort of alluded to this earlier, I probably wasn't comfortable in my own business skin because it was new, you know, like it was alien for me. And over time, I've got the confidence to be comfortable, which is why I can go in and talk to the bank manager, because I know when I've left that room and we've talked about Votes for Schools, he's going to be buzzing about Votes for Schools, because I'm confident that I can get that, I can articulate that, and I am passionate and motivated by it. And I think I'm really lucky that I've got, like, people always say to me, oh God, you know, you're really inspiring. And I'd never, like, every time somebody says that to me, I'm like, really? Wow. And I don't know, some people have, like, you know, skills where they can talk to people, you know, and be passionate, and it comes across, you know, they ooze it. And, you know, where that comes from, if it's genetic, I don't know. But, you know, some people, you know, I'm confident, but also I know a lot of people would love to be able to talk about what they do, and they do have that passion and they are motivated, and they just can't necessarily physically show that in the way that I've been blessed, you know, that I can do that. So
do you think that your background, as you described it earlier, you know, you had a bit of a, I was going to say, a bit of a different to the norm background, where you were probably exposed to things that somebody in a normal, you know what I mean?
yeah.
So I mean, for example, I grew up on a council estate, right? My parents were married, still are married. You know, they've been married nearly, I don't know, coming up for 65 odd years. So I would have said in my time that was kind of a normal upbringing. Yours was really different, and I wonder how much confidence you got from actually, you know, like you said, it's okay to be different, it's okay to do things like that.
Yeah, and I think, you know, there have been times throughout my life where the sort of what has happened, you know, whether that's something, you know, when I was younger or as I was growing up, you know, has sort of taken a hold a little bit in a negative way. But on the whole, I've mentioned this to you before, and obviously this is just like my little theory that I have in my own head. But, you know, when you're, you know, my mum, unfortunately, I mentioned earlier, she was an alcoholic. She wasn't functioning at all. So we had a tricky childhood, and quite often would have to sort of get her medical help, or, you know, it was just really, really tough. But, you know, when you're 5, 6 years old and you're faced in that situation, there is no other option for you other than to manage it, you know. Like, my dad was like working really, really hard in the city, trying to sort of pay all the bills, and he wasn't there, you know, when she wouldn't turn up to pick us up from school, you know, and I'd be in like year 1 or year 2. So you sort of, I don't know, it's like this toolkit that sometimes trickiness can give you. It's like you're building resilience and you don't even know you're building resilience. Like, and I think sometimes some people that haven't had anything in their lives, and suddenly as an adult, you know, bereavement hits or serious illness or something happens, like the toolkit has to be established as an adult. You know, as a child, it's like a natural thing that's happening to you. So I do think with trauma, you know, sometimes it can, well, I've tried to use it. I have tried to use it to my advantage. And also my story is interesting, and it's interesting to tell other people that have had, you know, not necessarily the kind of easiest upbringing. I love to be able to say to people, look, you know, things aren't always easy. You make mistakes, you know, things don't always go to plan. I was pregnant at 16. I had my son just literally, I was 2 months after I turned 17. Had no money, you know, just a total disaster. And but, you know, I just, that doesn't have to be it, you know, it doesn't have to be it. And I don't know what it is that was in me saying, no, take yourself off to college, no, do this, you know, get going, be a good role model. Yeah, I don't, it's difficult. I just, it's an inherent part. I think I'm very, very resilient. Yeah.
So how do you use that resilience then when your confidence is in the crumbling kind of house, then when your confidence is maybe at its lowest?
I mean, sometimes in fairness, if I'm feeling really sort of crappy and like I've got no confidence, I will literally procrastinate and sit and watch Netflix and just take myself. And like, I actually don't think that's unhealthy. I think if I'm not feeling great for whatever reason, it could be something personal, it could be something that's happened in the business, it could be that, you know, a member of staff is, you know, has resigned, or, you know, something like that, that can just knock you a little bit when you think everything's going really well. Sometimes I'll just say, I'm just going to take myself off. Like I just need to be in my little safe space where I can just you know, like feel a bit sorry for myself for a bit. You
Why
know,
not?
and I don't actually think there's anything wrong with that. I think it's absolutely fine to do that. There are times obviously when your confidence is at rock bottom and you don't have that option. You can't just go and, you know, get under the duvet and bury your head, you know. And I think, I mean, I've always thought about, you know, small things like, you know, if I've got to go into a difficult meeting, or I've got to go and do something like, I don't know, talk to 100 head teachers, and I'm not quite in the zone, I'm feeling a little bit, you know, not quite there. I suppose I say to myself all the time, it's an hour of your life, Kate. It's 1 hour of your life. There are children and there are people all over the world who are, you know, fleeing war, persecution, you know, living in poverty. Like, pull yourself together, you know. I give myself a bit of a talking to, because ultimately nothing is, in the scheme of what I do and what my life is like, nothing is like some of, you know, what is going on in the world around us. And I think that sometimes that, you know, putting that back into reality when you're feeling a bit down in the dumps is no bad thing. It's just grounding you. It's perspective, definitely. But but sometimes you have to put it out the bag and you have to play a role. And I suppose being a teacher, you play a role. You know, there's a lot of teaching that is, you know, you can have, I remember when my daughter, who, love her, is like the most amazing 17-year-old you've ever met. But when she was a baby, was literally the worst baby. I mean, she was terrible. And I actually went back to work when she was 5 months old because I was at my wit's end. She was waking up 5 times a night. She was super unhappy. It turns out she had a little problem in her esophagus that later got fixed. But so she was a very sort of unhappy child. And, you know, you've had no sleep, your child's distressed, you don't know what's going on, you know, my husband at the time, you know, my ex-husband was working shifts as a police officer. I mean, I was running on empty, but you get into that classroom and you've got to pull it out the bag, you know, you've got to give those kids a good deal. So I think there's also that as well. There's that sort of, you know, well, I love your saying, it's like, put your big girl pants on. And sometimes you have to do that because you're not always feeling great, you know.
But I am this whole kind of playing a role, sorry, talking over you, playing a role and kind of acting, because you know that I don't believe in the whole fake it till you make it. It's about, you know, act as if, and, you know, pretend you're confident. And I love your small things as well, you know, give yourself a talking to, just do small things that make a big difference. So I wonder if you had to describe how confidence helps you now in what you do, what would you say?
I think it just gives me the platform to get that passion and that the way that I talk to people and the way that I deliver things. I think it just, you know what I mean, it gives me the ability. It's like confidence is the cake and it allows me to put icing and a cherry on the top. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I love these analogies. Everyone's going to be seeing these on social media before long because they'll be like, oh, Gail's borrowing that one.
But it's true. I think it's it's like the core, isn't it? And with that, you know, and like we said earlier, it's sometimes it's a core and it's really, really strong, but other times it's a core and it's slightly more crumbly. But it does, it does allow me to elevate, you know, what I do and why I do it and get that across.
Yeah, get your message across. So come on then, what top tip or takeaway would you want to share with our listeners about confidence?
That's a tough one. I would say don't try and be like other people. Like, it's really easy to look at others and go, oh, you know, wow, they're, you know, I want to be like them, they're doing that, they're doing this, and it's fantastic. Like, you know, everyone's on their own journey, and you know, reach out to people that you inspire you as well. You know, they're not your you know, people are just normal. Like I've reached out to lots of people over the years, and people that I would have thought, oh God, they won't want to talk to me. And I'm really surprised at how much, especially as women, I think we're really keen on supporting each other. So top tip, yeah, would definitely be you, be confident in your own skin. And obviously always seek to develop yourself, but just be cool at what you are. And I suppose the other one is to I think reflection is really important. Like, reflect on your life, like look at where you've overcome challenges, look at where you've been successful, like, and not just big things, like little things, and use those as to scaffold you a little bit, like we've all done we've all like left tough relationships, or we've all failed at job interviews, but all of those things are actually part of the building blocks of life. And I think I always look back at my life and think, wow, you can look at it through different lenses, and I do try and look back in a way that's kind of like a negative experience has made me more resilient, more tolerant, have an understanding of different types of lived experiences. So I think reflect and be kind to yourself, definitely.
And I think they said, talk about the overcoming the challenges that scaffold you. So when you're in that crumbling mansion, how do you then use that scaffolding to kind of build it back up to the mansion where you want to be?
Well, this is it. Yeah, this is it. And it's difficult when you're feeling rubbish. It's difficult to be optimistic, and that's where you do have to try and, if you can't get out of it, you have your next Netflix day. But most of us can get out of it, and it's just we've got to talk to ourselves, and we've got to, we tell our own stories at the end of the day. If I want to tell myself that this is going to be awful and it's going to be a failure, then lo and behold, it likely will be, or I can tell myself the opposite. And it's not arrogant, it's not overconfident, it's belief. And it's, we should all have belief in ourselves, no matter what we do. We should all believe in ourselves.
And I think you're right. I think that belief, again, is part of the cake. The core of the confidence is that's kind of where it starts for me, because the true meaning of confidence is about having a faith, or the ability to rely on somebody or something, and having full trust in, whatever the outcome's going to be, which really doesn't matter. Brilliant. Definitely. So if people would like to connect with you or get in touch with Votes for Schools to find out more, where can we find you?
Oh, you can just hop onto the website. It's VotesForSchools.com, and there's lots of sort of contact us on there. But my email is kate@votesforschools.com, or I'm on LinkedIn. Obviously, all of our socials, Votes for Schools. You can find us on Facebook, Instagram, all of the common social medias. And listen, always reach out. Always happy to chat to people. Anybody who's kind of starting a business or wants to, always really happy to talk through. And also, often sharing a story makes people realise that it's doing anything like this, like starting a business, is not easy. And you can look at people, I could look at Zuckerberg and go, oh my God, what, he's had a journey. There's no doubt about it. That guy will have had a journey. And, what we can look at is the kind of the success. But, there's always been a journey. So anybody who's kind of on that journey, who looks at others and thinks, oh God, I just want to be a success, reach out to those people, because the chances are they've had a journey.
Oh, most definitely. I was talking about this with somebody yesterday, actually, about perception of the journey, and also, on social media, what people put out. And it was quite funny, because they said to me right at the very beginning of the conversation, oh, you look like you're really busy. And then at the bottom they said something else, and I was like, you see, that's just your perception of how busy you think I am from what you're seeing. But actually what you're not seeing is everything that's going on behind the scenes. So interesting. Oh, look, thank you so much for being the final guest on the series. It's been lovely to chat with you, and we'll pop all the social media details into the show notes for the episode, so people can reach out if they want to. So thank you very much, Kate.
Pleasure. Thanks, Gail.
So that brings to a close the first series of the Confidence Conversations podcast. I'd like to thank all of my guests, from the first podcast with LDV, to Ali Berry, to Catherine Edinburgh, to Laurie Webber, to Elaine Hart, Julian Moore, Elaine Atherton, Dan Heelan, Melanie Griffiths, Rob Lydiard, Debbie Ford, and of course Kate Harris. So there'll be another series coming up later in the year, and I might mix it up, it might be a little bit different, but still confidence conversations through and through. So if you want to come onto the podcast and tell your confidence story, then why not get in touch with me on social media, or of course you can email me at gail@enrichmentcoaching.co.uk. So a massive thank you to you if you've downloaded and you've listened or you've sent me a message. It absolutely means the world to me. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon for Series 2.